Hey, this is Ralph, and in this video I want to go over the Properties panel and setting your stage size. Now I've started up a new Flash movie, new Flash document, and I've got my blank white stage here. And I can see that on my Properties panel, my stage is at a default 550 by 400, and that's actually fine for what we're working with. So it's not too critical, but I do want you to realize that it's very easy to change your stage size. And you'd want to do this depending on the kind of thing you're working on. So later on, if we're going to be making banner advertisements and stuff like that, then we'll definitely want to change our stage size. I'm going to go ahead and adjust my stage size to 1280 by 720, and that's kind of an HD set of dimensions there. So now my stage is a little bit bigger, and in fact I can't see the whole thing when I scroll left and right. No worries there, because in my document panel I can go ahead and click on this drop down for the zoom, and I could choose show all, and now it fits in there a little bit better. Now I still have a little bit of a scroll, but it's just because the edges of my stage are hitting the top and the bottom. I could go to show frame, and now I can just see the edges of the stage. So now I have a better feeling that I can see the entire thing on here. So now my stage is set to 1280 by 720, kind of a widescreen format. Also notice on the properties, my frames per second. This is going to make more sense once we start working with the timeline. But a movie is basically a series of still images, a frame. And the higher the frames per second, then the smoother the animation is going to be, the smoother the movie. So there's probably not many of you that remember seeing old 8mm video from the 70s and stuff like that, but there was fewer frames per second, so it kind of clicked along. The more frames per second, then the smoother your animation, but also the bigger the file size. So this can be adjusted depending on what you're going for. For the most part, I think I'm just going to keep it at the default 24 frames per second. But if you were doing something a little bit less important, maybe it was an advertisement or a very simple animation, you could knock this back to 15 frames per second. And you'd still have an animation. It might look a little blocky or jerky in some parts, but your file size would be greatly reduced. So we can easily change the dimensions of our stage, and we can also change the frames per second of the animation. And this could be increased, by the way, too. You can also change your stage color. And I don't do this a lot, but sometimes it'll come in handy, especially if you're taking an animation, a movie, and putting it onto a web page of a known color. You could match the stage color to the web page color. So for instance, I can click on this background color for my stage and choose, I'll just choose a light blue here, and now my entire stage is that color. And you can change these after the fact, by the way, too. So after you start working, you can change your mind about the stage color, and you can change your mind about the dimensions. You can also change your mind about the frames per second, but that could affect some of your calculations on your timeline. So right now, at 15 frames per second, 15 frames on my timeline is 1 second of animation. If I adjust that number after I've started creating things, that may impact what I'm showing to my visitors. So if I knock this back up to 24 frames per second, there we go, 24 frames on my timeline is 1 second of animation. Therefore, a 10-second animation is going to use 240 frames. So a little bit of math requirement, it looks like, with this Flash class. But start by creating a new blank stage and set the size and colors to what you like. And for now, let's just keep it at the default 24 frames per second.